How do you do this again? The idea of how do you read as a subject for a college class can be a little bit weird. I do get that. But there are different types of reading. I don't approach a newspaper the same way I approach reading the back of a box of cereal, and I don't approach a novel the same way I approach an academic work. So, how do you read for maximum impact if you're talking about good academic writing? It's good to know.
We don't normally read critically. If you say pick up the campus newspaper or a magazine while you're waiting for them to put tires on your car or something like that, you're going to be doing a non-critical reading. You're going to be reading passive. You're going to be looking at facts. You're going to be trusting in a little bit. It's not going to ask you to be active in processing the information. It will be more about reacting to the stuff they give you. Critical reading is a completely different thing. It's an active process. You don't just sit there and let the information soak into your brain like liquid into a sponge. No, instead, you're constantly interrogating things. You're asking questions. You're trying to understand stuff. You ask the what, how, why questions. You come in with a certain amount of skepticism because it's their job to prove their point. You come in with a definitive purpose. You're reading this stuff for a particular reason. So, how do you read critically? Well, the first strategy you need to employ is previewing. Previewing is where you try to get an overall view of the paper, the book, the article, whatever, before you start to sit down and read it properly. Read the titles, read the headings, read the first line of each paragraph, look at the research. And doing this will give you an awful lot of information as to what the paper is going to hit you with. What's your purpose in reading this? What specifically are you trying to get out of it? What was the writer's purpose in writing it? What were they trying to do? And with each of these, it'd be like, does it succeed in fulfilling your purpose? Does it succeed in fulfilling the writer's purpose? Sometimes the writer's purpose might not be as open and honest as you would expect. An example of this is that Facebook hires psychiatrists, sociologists, and a lot of academics to study how their service works. And I remember reading one where the scientist working for Facebook put out a study that says, yes, indeed, Facebook does tend to add to people finding themselves in knowledge echo chambers. If you have a point of view, Facebook is going to give you stuff that supports your own point of view more than they're going to give you stuff that challenges it. It was an interesting conclusion from someone working for Facebook, but less surprising, the scientist's response was to suggest that you read more Facebook. Because by reading more, you can force yourself to find more opinions. Is it kind of surprising that a scientist who's working for Facebook is going to stress that you probably should look at Facebook more often? That's a less noble and probably hidden purpose. To what genre does the work belong? What are the conventions of that genre? An academic paper is written a whole lot differently than something in a trade magazine. And when you know this, you get a better view of what to expect from the piece. Academic writing, for instance, you know by now that it's very front loaded. The argument's shoved right at the top. It's going to be fairly formulaic in your structure. Something in a magazine that caters to people actually in the field might not do that. Something that goes to a general educated audience definitely won't do that. It's an academic convention. And you'd probably read it differently as a result. Where can you get advice if it turns hard? And this is a question you should have a decent idea of before you start. If you end up seeing stuff that you don't understand, is there someone you can talk to? Do you know someone who knows this better than you? Do you know sources you can go to get a basic grounding in the field if you find out that you don't have enough information to really process it? And finally, by previewing, you can really get a good grasp on what reading strategies would work best. Now, while reading, there's a few different approaches you can make. I am of the mind that I don't ever really like to read anything serious without a pencil in my hand. When you mark something as you're reading, it helps make the information solidify in your mind. We can only keep 5 to 9 things in short term memory at any time. Writing stuff down is one of the tricks that helps move stuff into longer term memory. So, what you do while you're reading: underline key points, key phrases. If it looks like it's something of their argument, underline it. If they're defining a term, underline it. Anything that looks like it's tremendously important. Within a reason, though, you don't want to be underlining entire pages. I had someone in a theory class when I was a grad student who I looked over at their book and it had 3 pages all highlighted. Really not as all that useful when you go back to it and you don't know what you found particularly important in there. So selective, but key points, key phrases. Annotate, write in the margins. And this is a place for a wider variety of types of comments. If the writer is doing something particularly complex, summarize their main points. So when you thumb through the article in the future, you can look at your notes to get a basic overview of what they were talking about. Write where you agree with or disagree with the author. And it's a good idea to do this because you should always be interrogating the authors. I could point you to any number of books in my office where I could show you a history of me arguing with the author. The first big theory book I ever got, I've done about 4 or 5 read throughs, and each time I'm arguing with a guy. Refer to what the writer is doing. If they're giving you a claim, mark it. If they're giving you statistics, mark it. If they're giving counter arguments, refuting opposition, mark it. If something in the article or the chapter, whatever, raises a question or makes you concerned about something, write it down. If it connects to something else that you have seen, read and write it down. After you finish reading it, don't put the book away and then move on immediately to something else. Sit down, write a paragraph or so summarizing what you just read. And this is another one of these tools that's going to move stuff from your short-term memory into your longer-term memory. Exploratory writing. If we're on campus together, I do this an awful lot where I have you sit down and just write about the thing you just read or the thing we just discussed, because it starts getting thoughts flowing. Outline what the writer does, how they go from point to point.
There are some studies that say reading hard copies, like, say, a actual paper book, can yield you better comprehension than reading stuff online. I don't know if the science is still in on that, but it's an interesting thought. If you aren't going to read in paper, or if you're reading something which you really can't write in the margins of, this is a great reason why things like Post-it notes exist. If you can put little Post-it stickers on the side, you can do a lot of the same level of commentary that you would do if you were writing in your own copy of the textbook. Hey, even if you're one of the people who doesn't like writing in a book for some reason, if you have some kind of ethical issue, that's not really an excuse if you have Post-it notes. I used to go through tons and tons of Post-it notes. But active reading means engaging it all the time, and writing is really, really going to help on that one. Hope this helps you. See you next time.